Welcome to the McIntyre Inc. Video podcast. And if you're listening online, great, on the radio. If you're out jogging, if you're in the car driving on a long trip, or just want to listen to some good podcasts, thank you for listening. I appreciate it. How you doing, Brianna?
I'm doing good.
All right. So what'd you think? We were talking some of these things before we started here, and our producer was talking about some of these things that about Jesus and Christianity, and talked about North Korea. And you said, I don't want to talk. You talked about
I was
North
like,
Korea.
I can't speak in an intelligent way on it because I have not been
To North Korea?
Yeah, obviously. But I just don't feel like I have enough information to be like, weigh in. But go ahead, kick it off.
Yeah. So North Korea, it's a complete communist country. It's very closed down. I don't know if you've ever seen any of those satellite pictures of South Korea and North Korea at night. There's no lights on at night. And so, they don't allow Christianity. And our producer was talking about that. And it's true. They don't allow, somebody find a Bible and they're thrown in prison for life. It's a really crazy thing. Then we start talking about how Christianity, and there's, Nigeria, there's Christians being killed. And it's sometimes not safe to be a Christian in certain parts of this world, which is kind of crazy.
It is.
Right? Because we have such freedom here in this country of the different faiths. And our producer talking about how he was raised Baptist, and there's so many different religions or different denominations. And I've talked about this before.
For sure.
I think it kind of reminds me of this country being founded, but, in how the white man overcame and killed off the Indians and took over this country, right? As bad as it was, as good as it was, whatever the situation is, the reason why is because the tribes, they were fierce fighters, the Indians, but they were not together.
Right. It wasn't organized.
It was not
organized.
organized.
They were brilliant.
Yes.
They knew the land. They knew things. They know things that we still probably
don't know. That's right. And so, but they weren't organized.
Correct.
And so, looking at these different churches, and I detested Baptists, right? And so, just to let you know, my stepmother was Baptist, and we were raised Catholic up in Michigan with all the rest of the Irish people who like to drink and smoke cigarettes. That's one thing about the priest. They would come to your house and drink all your booze and smoke all your cigarettes. But it was a good time. Anyways, I digress.
Did they get drunk?
Oh, yeah. I imagine they did. I mean, I was young. I didn't understand it. But yeah, they would sit there for a long time until the booze ran out, and then they'd leave.
Okay.
But that's fine.
I'm just interesting.
They smoke a lot of cigarettes, too. But yeah, the Baptists never did that. And so...
Well, they did it secretly.
Yeah. They always say, Baptists are like... they're like cats, they fool around, but you can never catch them.
Yeah. Well, were you telling me a story about you were at some party and then...
Oh, yeah.
Like down the block.
Yeah, when I was in the Air Force, I was dating a gal from the Baptist denomination, and her whole family was Baptist. And so I was in the Air Force, and we were drinkers, right? I was like, 19, and hey, where the hell's the beer?
Yeah.
And one of her uncles said, hey, Michael, come over here. We walked outside. He says, you see that car down there? And I saw down there's an old Impala, probably 50 yards down the road with the hood up. And he said, that's where the bar is. And so I walked down there, and they had a full bar inside this Impala, and so that's how you got
hidden in plain sight.
But it was not in the house,
right?
And then you have a little glass, and so. But yeah, I think the denomination thing is, you got Baptist, you got Presbyterian, you got Methodist, you got Catholicism, you've got the Charismanias, then you got Episcopalian.
It's all a culture, as I was thinking about like WASP culture, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, very much a culture, more than it is denominational, and more than it is theological. It's more of a culture.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, you go to a Protestant church, fine. Or that's what you're going to say. You're going to ascribe to that. But then it's more like, we do this, we don't do this. And like, it's such a fascinating.
Yeah, I think it all boils on to legalism.
For sure.
In my opinion.
Well, okay, but not what I'm talking. I'm talking about like I'm talking about like the uppity, like we go to Ivy Leagues, like that waspy culture.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. And so
we have a section in Dallas that's more like that.
Presbyterians.
Yeah, no, like Highland Park.
Oh, Highland Park.
Wouldn't you say?
Highland Park Presby?
No, Highland Park in general is waspy.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Well,
You're like, what are you talking about?
Well, I thought maybe you're talking about the church in Highland Park.
No, but that's where they go.
Yeah.
Yes, but it's yeah, and it's just interesting how like. And it's usually people with a lot of money who are, and so it's like a culture in and of itself, but like, which is like a denomination. And so I'm equating a culture and a denomination to each other.
Gotcha.
Because I think it kind of comes down to that. Theologically, if you put everyone in a room at the end of the day, they would probably be like, yes, Jesus is Lord. Mm-hmm. They would agree.
That he died for our sins, and he got risen on the third day.
And I know that then there's other theological thoughts, feelings, whatever. But
most of them believe that.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. But
so if you got the Presbyterian, the Methodist, the Catholic, the Baptist, what else you got? Is Episcopalian?
Right.
Right.
But so my argument is you end up going to the one that the culture is more palatable to you.
100%.
I think very few people actually choose theologically. Some do, some care. But I think you're going to probably go with like, you're just going to go with the group.
Well, right.
I'm making a sweeping statement.
Well, your mother and I got married in the Catholic Church. Yeah, she really liked the Catholic.
She liked the culture.
She liked the culture, and I really didn't care either way. She was happy, I was happy, right? So we would go. And then after we got married, for some reason, we got away from that. I think that might have been after your grandfather died. And then we went to Methodist. And I really liked the Methodist, I did. It was very simple, and it wasn't fire and brimstone, if you will. I didn't like the Baptist because it was fire and brimstone. And the ones that I was at was legalistic. And my stepmother was very legalistic.
Right. So for you, it probably felt manipulative.
Yeah.
Fire and brimstone
I felt shame.
Right. And so they manipulated, the message was manipulated so you would feel the shame. Then you give your life to the Lord, and then it's this
That's
whole
right. And so, it was manipulation and shame. And I don't think Jesus wanted us to have shame and guilt.
Yeah. And also note, we're not saying Baptist, that's their like whole MO. We love Baptist.
No, I'm not.
We love Baptist.
Of course. Yes.
This is an episode where we're probably going to throw everyone under the bus. Okay. So it's not, and we're not perfect, including ourselves.
Well, listen, after I gave my life to Jesus, I pulled you out of an Episcopalian school
and into
put
a Baptist.
You in a Baptist deal.
Exactly.
And then I put Brecca into a Baptist deal. Yeah. And she graduated from a Baptist university.
Right.
And I spent $226,000 with the Baptist. Okay, so I love the Baptist.
Yeah.
All right, so just to have...
just so the audience knows. But
I don't like the legalism in any of it.
And it's the culture around. It's the culture. So I don't, until this moment, I didn't think about the fact that it's just all these cultures, really, more than anything.
Right. Just in fact, we had a little thing the other day, and somebody said to us, you cannot do deliverance if you're drinking alcohol.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to know where it says that.
Right.
And if I don't think you should be drunk.
Right.
The Bible says don't be drunk in alcohol.
Correct.
Which I get that. And I haven't been drunk in alcohol in, 20 years. But I do like to have a bourbon or a scotch now and then, and maybe a glass of wine.
But Jesus did make some really, probably very strong wine.
Yeah.
At the wedding, then when he turned the water to wine.
He saved the best for last.
Yeah, right. That's usually the strong.
And everybody said, man, this is the best. You saved the best for last. In their, Judeo way, right?
Yeah.
Well, they generally gave the
best wine at first, and then get drunk.
Get them drunk, then pour out when they didn't care.
Yeah.
So, And so at any rate, I think my theory is, which maybe nobody cares about, but I'll share it anyway, is that if all the denominations would just lay down their rules and regulations, we could also get to this revival thing that everybody talks about all the time.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if it'll ever happen. I hope it does. I guess someday it will.
Yeah.
But I think if it's the church, in my opinion, is too political. Right?
Yeah. Define too political.
Well, the Pope, number one.
Okay.
Okay.
And so you're not talking about the world of politics. You're talking about how it operates in its own structure and system. It's political,
That's
which
right.
I think I just wanted that distinction.
You've got the Southern Baptist conventions that go on. They're huge. Right. They're huge. And then you got the Episcopalians, and they have, they allow gay marriages, and do this sort of thing. So or they bless the gay marriages or whatever. So I do think they're political, and I do think, I think it falls into a a degree of manipulation and control.
Right.
I do.
Okay, so here, and this is the interesting thing to me when I look at denominations coming from the last however many years of more being involved in like a charismatic type of expression in the church. What I find interesting is what I don't like about a charismatic church is there's no regulations.
There's no boundary.
So when there's no one who's going to come and be like, this pastor really screwed up. Get him out. I mean, it happens. You do have with the Southern Baptist or the Episcopal.
You've got a hierarchy.
You do. And there's something about that I like.
I agree. I do agree. But then when you get to the Catholicism, okay, you've got a really strong hierarchy.
It's a very different kind of hierarchy too.
It is.
Yes. And there's a lot of corruption there too.
Yeah, and especially back in the day.
Yeah.
When they built the Vatican on selling rights to heaven.
Right. Now, I think there's corruption in all of those other systems.
100%.
But there's also corruption in the wild, wild west of charismania all the time too.
Right.
Which I think we've seen a lot of in the last year. Or like come to light. However, again, and I think you and I are going to agree, I think house church is the answer.
I do too. I think and it goes back to Acts, does it not? Okay.
Yes.
And so the original church was in Acts was
intimate
in a church in a neighborhood, and I think I agree. It doesn't require big money, right? Which
you shouldn't,
and you don't need a building. I think the buildings are. I think the buildings become almost what do you call it, an idol?
Yeah.
And I think it's not good.
Yeah.
They spend $30, $40, $50, $100 million in these buildings.
Yeah.
Let's
spend it on something else.
Right. Let's spend it on something else. And, you can, let's go on these mission trips and stuff. Listen, we went on a mission deal in YPO down in, where was it, Ethiopia? Or, no, Escanaba.
Ensenada. Ethiopia? You've never been to Africa.
Nor am I going.
Don't say that. All right. God's going to send you.
Jesus, repent. I repent. I'll go if you want me to, Jesus. But I do want to have a nice place to stay. Because like you guys went to India and your trip there, it was through Watermark, right?
Yeah, it was people we knew from Watermark, and then they were hooked up to this organization.
You and your sister went, and some of the friends at Watermark. What you guys did is just unbelievable. Share some of that?
Yeah, I'm like, what did we do?
Well,
but I know what we like. When you go on once like years later a mission trip, you're like, oh, I see how it changed me. I don't know if I did anything for them, which is really, I think, one of God's main purposes of a mission trip, is to get us out of our normalcy. But we were visiting children with AIDS, and it was an orphanage, and so just really doing whatever we could to
all right.
Bring
so
life to
let me
them.
remind you, it was founded by an ex-nun.
Yes, correct.
Okay, she had left the convent and founded this orphanage.
Yeah,
because in India, if the children developed AIDS or was passed down with any kind of AIDS from the parents, they were shunned.
Yeah.
And they were put into this place to die.
Yeah.
Yes, because they didn't have the medicine back then.
Right.
So these children, how old were these children?
They ranged from like 3 till 12.
And their life expectancy was?
Not the longest.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, and they hardly ever had food and food would show up every day.
Yeah.
They would pray for their food and pray for
It would show up. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So how did that affect you and your sister?
In a huge way. It was when so the week before I left, I was 20 years old right before I left, and we had gone to the upper room for the first time. And it was when I was kind of getting a little hungrier in my faith and like, okay, there might be more than where we were going at the time. And I remember I started to read about like, maybe it could have been a Francis Chan book, and it was about house churches and people who were actually like hungry for the Lord, people who were in North Korea in underground house churches, and like they would do whatever. And I was like, okay, I'm in college at SMU. That's a whole cultural thing in itself.
True.
And I was a believer, but I think it was God was inviting me to something a little bit deeper at that point. And so, I just kind of started to understand very intro to who the Holy Spirit is to us. And then the next week I'm going to India, and then I'm hearing about like these real life miracles that are always happening. And having a more Baptist background to my faith, to my initial like accepting the Lord into my life, I think you kind of understand that, like, on the mission field, these things do happen potentially. But there was something my eyes were opening up to, like, oh, God moves now. And he moves for people today in this moment. Yeah. The kids, they would get supplies, but they wouldn't have everything that they needed. And so they'd pray and rice would show up the next day. And so you're like, that, how can you say there's no, like, God moving in and, like, wanting to take care of his children?
Yeah.
And so, and I mean, I could be wrecked right now and cry, but
I know.
Effective to,
well,
like,
every time I think about it, I can get emotional. All right, thank you for sharing that, Brianna. Who was that lady that we had at Echoes that was a great speaker?
Carrie Lloyd.
All right, Carrie Lloyd's book. Okay, I can't remember the
Noble Renaissance.
Listen, you guys want to read amazing book and hear how God moves today? Mm-hmm. That book, and I think one of the stories in there just was crazy good. Shout out to Carrie Lloyd, one of our favorite people of all time. She was amazing. And so, I think when you see that and getting back to that, and I think, I think in Catholicism, they recognize miracles, right? And
they have a great reference.
They have a great reference,
yep.
and they have to be checked off. Everybody, everybody has to get a little something.
Charismatics, we could use a little bit of that. A little bit of someone like, okay, let's notate that. Okay, that's real, not real. That would be actually really good.
Yeah, because I remember, in being with Upper Room and all of a sudden, somebody comes in there and they're manifesting. Mm-hmm. And I remember Michael Koulianos was preaching and he was offended. I was offended. This woman was acting crazy. I was like, dang, man, is she, I can't, she's really acting bizarre in front of the church.
She was moving, physically moving, and it was different.
It was different. So Koulianos stopped and said, listen, this offends me too. Mm-hmm. I'm with you, bro. Yeah. Because I'd like to have, somebody take her out in a parking lot and say, hey, go find somewhere else to do this. But Jesus was offensive.
Yeah.
And the Holy Spirit can be offensive.
Well, and it's funny, I actually knew that girl, and she has one of the purest hearts.
Wow.
And so, I mean, not that's not for me to judge if it was real or not.
I get that.
And that's what you're saying.
But that's what I'm saying. And I do agree that there should be more, because I see these videos, people, having their legs straightened out. I don't know if I'm being manipulated, if that's even happening, or if it's just everybody thinks and says it happened. Did it happen?
Right.
And, Freeland always said, sometimes too, during this stuff that, sometimes it might be weird and probably is. Some of it's God, maybe it's
right.
And so I do think there needs to be, something in there. And I think the Catholics do go through a process of this thing, which maybe it's too much of a process. I don't know.
But they could help us out.
But every time that, Mother Mary, is crying in every photograph she's got, they all get out there and start crying themselves. So I don't know about that. But that's
a whole different
That's a whole nother deal,
Yeah.
And so, they worship Mother Mary, which, I don't know. But that's a whole other thing. Yeah. And so at any rate, I do think that if the churches would sometimes come together, it'd be a nice thing to have a national, or not a national, it probably wouldn't be good to have a national, but have a world conference of Christianity.
Yeah.
All denominations come together. I remember in 9/11, right after 9/11, the Bush administration was in the White House, George W. Bush. And like 10 days later, they held a big ceremony in the cathedral there, right next to the White House, or in the Capitol.
Yeah,
and it was every denomination was there.
Cathedral.
You had the Muslim, you had the Jewish rabbi, you had the Catholics, you had the
so you had every religion.
It was really cool.
Yeah,
it was. I remember I stopped the whole office and we all watched it live on national television. So I think those kind of things, and it's sad that it takes a tragedy as 9/11 to do that, to bring everybody together.
Well, okay, so recent event, Charlie Kirk, okay?
100%.
So I think there has been a beautiful movement, and what I'm hoping about what I'm about to share, I hope it's really a sub-movement that actually doesn't infect things, okay? I got mad the other day. I was getting really annoyed because I was like, okay, obviously we're conservative. And I'm so thankful for how I feel like barriers have been broken down for the conservative agenda, okay, in the last year and a half. And it's been really good. Like, we've kind of reset some things, which is good. What I'm mad about is if this whole, like, Candace Owens, like, is this real? Is this not real? Like, all of
Erica Kirk.
Okay, all of that. I don't like, if it truly is splitting the Republican Party, I'm pissed. I'm really pissed. And I'm like, why are we losing sight of the bigger picture? And I don't have a problem with people investigating things. Like, go for it. Do whatever you want. Like, but if it if it splits the party, then I'm like, then we're taking steps back, just like the Democrats just did.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know that's how it always probably the pendulum swings. But do you think it's actually splitting the party, or is that a subculture that I'm viewing?
I think it's a subculture, and I think the majority probably don't even really know who Candace Owens is. All right.
Yeah.
Now, I might be naive in that. I used to be a Candace Owens fan.
Right.
Until she went wacko. And I think she's wacko. And I think not wacko. She's very smart. I think she's just doing it to get clicks. Right?
Okay. So that's,
I think it's a money move.
Right.
I don't think anybody inside Turning Point USA decided they wanted to kill Charlie Kirk.
Yeah.
I think that's
ridiculous. I think that's
ludicrous. Yeah. And, but I do think that I don't think it's going to split the party, and I do think one of the things I think it's going to is that it's going to bring more people together ultimately, and I think that's going to be a good thing. Now, look, Charlie Kirk is controversial. Okay,
for sure.
I thought he was good. I mean, he was in your face. It was smash mouth.
Right.
It was in your face, and I think that's fine. I don't think it's bad. But I do think that we need to have a coming together on this, and they need to solve, the issue. And I think I was disappointed Eric Kirk even gave a sit down with Candace Owens.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't have stooped that way. The only thing I'll say about Eric Kirk, and I like her, they're going to need somebody that has some riz. Okay.
You don't think she does?
Okay. I don't. I think I like her hard. I think she's got, she's polished. She's, but I think they're going to need somebody to lead that Turning Point USA that's got that Charlie Kirk charismatic.
And it'll look different. Obviously,
it will look
won't
different.
Be him.
And then Charlie Kirk was supernaturally blessed.
Yeah, he was.
He was very intelligent, and he could piss off people, and that's fine.
Right.
Just like Jesus would piss off people too, and it cost him, put him on the cross. So I think, and the same thing, Charlie Kirk. And so I think, of course, he wasn't Jesus Christ by any stretch, but I do think he had a good point, and I do think he did a lot for this country. I don't know. And I want Erica to win,
of course,
but I don't know if she can carry.
Do you think
she can be the front person? I think she can be the CEO.
Yeah. Okay, so I haven't watched enough where she's having discourse with the public, because that's what Charlie did. I think that was the gift.
Prove me wrong.
Yeah, and that he really helped people come together and be like, no, we need to talk, even if we disagree. And I think that was a godsend. We needed that. Can she do that?
I don't think so. And maybe she gets better at it. I don't know. But I do think, time will tell. And I think, and I want it to win.
So with that, from your perspective, do you think that she's trying to step into a calling that's not hers? Do you think that's part of it? If she's trying to be...
I mean, look, it's not the first time a wife takes over.
Right.
Okay. There's been congressmen killed or died, and the wife comes in and runs for the election and wins the seat. It happens. Even, when Woodrow Wilson was alive, he was sick, and his wife came in and did a lot of stuff for the presidency. But this is different. It's very different because it was such
You don't have to.
Right. And I think she's going to be fine CEO.
But not the front man.
I don't think so. I don't think she's got the riz to do it. I just don't. And maybe she develops it. I don't know. But she's going to have to be coached, because that organization is mainly youth, right?
Right.
Young people, right? Gen Zs, young millennials. They need somebody with that can put that, that 400 psi up their butt every day, and you got to motivate them. You got to motivate.
And Charlie did have had such a masterful way.
Now at some point he was going to have to pass it on to somebody else.
Right.
He'll be 70. He would have been 70 years old trying to do it. You can't. So there would have been a legacy built at some point.
Yeah.
But I think this has gotten so big. But I think it's going to be fine. I think it's going to be really interesting, and I hope they're very successful.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and thanks for calming my concerns. I was just like, if this is gonna split the party? I was pissed. And I don't know why, but I know I tend to go on a deep dive of like subcultural movements.
The only thing that would split the party really is economics.
Okay, talk about that.
If people all go broke.
Oh, well, yeah.
People lose all their money.
100%.
Okay, you have inflation at 10%, like it was when Biden was in 9%. And if everybody's like that, you have massive inflation. If you have, massive wars breaking out, that would split the party.
For sure.
Okay. But no, the Candace Owens BS, no.
Okay, good. Good.
That's my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Okay, go ahead.
No, I just, I don't know where we're going to go with this. Jesus knows where we're going to go with this, but I think it needs to be, talked about.
Yeah. Well, okay. So back to the denominations. It seemed like for a moment, at least my perception, was that people were really coming together with faith right after Charlie Kirk passed.
Yes. Well, the memorial service with all the, President's Men there,
Right.
Marco Rubio blew me away. I mean, he was awesome. He was Billy Graham up there. And even, J.D. Vance, all of them preached the gospel.
Yeah.
And I love that. That's the first time I think ever the cabinet gets up and preaches the gospel on, live national TV. I don't think it's ever happened before. I loved it. I thought it was magnificent.
Yeah.
Do I think Trump's, a perfect Christian? Not by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah.
But I do believe he's doing God's work.
Yeah. But okay, so I'm more focused on the revival that actually happened in response.
And I don't know
I'm not saying revival happened, but people were compelled.
Time is of the essence.
And I think that, the reason I use that as an example, I think that was like one of those moments in history when people put aside denomination and they came together.
Yeah, I agree. Because it was a public assassination.
Right.
Everybody's
and
seen
it's sad that that's 100%. What usually has to happen.
You and your sisters and your mother were bawling your eyes out.
Yeah.
And I get it. And I wasn't as familiar with Charlie Kirk as you all were. But after his assassination, I got more familiar.
Yeah.
I mean, I was familiar, but not as much as you guys were.
Yeah.
And I think, but no, I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens. And I think it's going to be critical over the next, 2 to 3 years and see how this pans out.
Yeah. And you have to, a movement like that has to be fostered.
Yeah, it does. And
otherwise it'll just.
Right. And and I think it will be. I do. I think God's hands on it. Just like, so I think that's going to be good. All right.
I'm still mulling over the culture of chins.
Yeah.
And I think that people go to what they're comfortable with.
Yeah.
And is it more about socioeconomic, or is it more about these people look like me and this is where I go?
That's what I loved about Watermark. Yeah.
Yes.
I was very comfortable at Watermark. And Todd Wagner, I mean, I could totally relate. I love Todd, still love Todd. And, he was kind of, he would get up, he would get pissed. I liked the way he was real about that.
Right.
Now, what I didn't like is that, I remember one time we went in there and there was this painter who was painting Jesus, right? And he did all this, it was music to it. And everybody stood up and gave him a standing ovation. And Todd baked our ass for it.
Yeah.
I thought, what?
Yeah.
And I didn't understand that. I didn't understand.
There wasn't the culture of honor that you see in other denominations or other churches was not there in that way. It was more, it sounds like he didn't have the perspective of it's not okay to give praise to a human for their talent.
Which I thought was kind of,
I think that's weird.
I thought it was weird.
Yeah.
And then the other time that Todd spoke, and I've told him this before, so this is nothing new, but, he talked about Vince Lombardi and how he was an alcoholic. But he was a devout Catholic. He went to mass every day and one of the greatest football coaches of all time. And he wasn't a very good husband or a father.
Yeah.
But he was a devout, he loved Jesus.
Yeah.
And the way Todd spoke with him, it just really turned me off.
Him, yeah.
Yeah. And I thought that was, in my opinion, I thought it was hypercritical, and I don't know. It didn't seem, And listen, there's a lot of men who are born again Christians that aren't great husbands and great fathers.
For sure,
right?
Yeah.
And so, anyways, I just thought it was a cheap shot at Vince Lombardi, and the man's dead. And so I don't know. That kind of soured me a little bit. So, and that was after we had went to Upper Room.
Okay.
Because we had gone to Upper Room 3 or 4 weeks, and I thought, man, because this Upper Room was strange cat struts, man. It was I went in there, and he's talking about going to where you're comfortable. I was not comfortable at Upper Room. First of all, when we got there, started at 5:00, and everybody, the worship was going on, and everybody was dancing, and there was this guy over there dancing what's that lady in Seinfeld. I can't remember the way she danced. Anyways, I thought, man, if that's the pastor, I'm out of here. And it was crazy that service that worship went on for an hour and 15 minutes. And then, we get into the actual service, which was good. And it was Peter Lewis was the first time he was preaching. And I remember I was thinking, man, this is going on. And I looked at my watch and it's like 7:45. And I was like, let's go, Stacy. And she was like, no. I thought, oh man, this is going to take a long time. And so it was hard for me to be there.
Mm-hmm.
It really was. I didn't like it.
Mm-hmm.
It was different. There was people rolling around on the ground.
Yeah.
People didn't look like me or us. And so when I got in the car and Brecca said it was an awakening for her at 14 years old, I figured, well, I need to like it. I need to figure this thing out, which we did. We ultimately stayed there for many, many years and I learned more about Jesus there than I ever did at Watermark, especially the Holy Spirit. Right. Nothing against Watermark. It's just I was a baby Christian when I went to Watermark.
Right. Yeah.
And Todd was a great on-ramping pastor for me. I needed Todd Wagner to come into Jesus. We went there for 6 years. And I remember why we even went there, because your friend said that, you guys are looking for a church. She invited us to go. And it was at Lake Highlands to start out with. Yeah.
But I guess maybe if I'm going to leave the audience with an encouragement, it's like, consider where you go, why do you go there? Is it is it easy for you to go there? And I mean,
is it political reason, business reasons?
Or is it these people are like me? And why have you either not ventured out of that?
Good point.
Or why do you want to keep staying?
That's a good point.
So just food for thought, not like you need to change your whole life, but
I mean, before I was a real believer, we would go to the Methodist church. I'd go to check the box.
Yeah.
And I felt something about it. I didn't know what it was, but I did like to go.
Yeah.
And it was not very long. It's
predictable.
It didn't cramp my style. And I was selfish that way.
Yeah.
To where the Charismatic place, that was a commitment.
Yeah.
And that was a big commitment, and but it was a good commitment.
Yeah.
And then the Catholics, they were on a 45-minute shot clock, man. It was,
they know what they're doing.
I remember after getting your communion, everybody's leaving. If it's past 45 minutes, they're out the door.
Yeah.
And the priest would just be there, by himself. But that was just the way. And I do think sometimes it gets to be cultural, and it's what you grow up with. And I think Jesus wants us to get out of our comfort zone, and to stretch.
Yeah.
And maybe go to a different denomination. I know during COVID, we would go up to different denominations.
Yeah, we went to some Anglican churches. Enjoyed it, actually. But I think it's healthy to question a little bit, like, why have I always been Episcopalian? Why have I always been Presbyterian? Or Charismatic? Why have you always been Charismatic?
Right. Yeah, I remember we went to one Anglican deal, and it was it reminded me of Catholic, because they had
tons of incense.
They had incense. And I mean, because I remember in my Catholic grow up, every now and then they have a little tiny incense.
Yeah.
Man, it was like a Cheech and Chong movie in here, like somebody was smoking a bunch of pipes, and but it was great. It was really good, and they were very nice.
Yeah,
very small.
Yeah.
So I think was it our normal deal? No. Was the songs?
But
boring?
Was the gospel preached?
Yes, it was. And what it was interesting, I remember, because when I was growing up, I never listened to any of it. I didn't care about it. But when I'm hearing the priest speak the homily, it is the gospel. And it's like, okay, I can align with that.
Right, right.
It's not just the charismatics that are speaking the gospel.
And I think that's what is a little frustrating with when you're so like, no, this is my denomination.
This is the way it is.
This is how it is. And you're like, okay, have you tried another church? Right. I do like going to other churches every now and then, because it's, there's something to receive there.
There is.
I don't think there's been a church I've been to since really knowing the Lord where I was like, I don't see anything. I'm sure there are places that way, but he's there.
Yeah.
And he's ready to be there.
I was going to tell you something, a funny thing on some church that we went to at one time. I can't remember what it was, but.
Was it an African church?
No, I can't, no.
The African churches are fun. If you haven't been to an African church, go to an African church.
It's off the chain, fun.
That's fun.
Yeah. But I can't remember what it was. But anyways, maybe I'll remember next week. So adventure out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, why not?
Go out there and I think you're going to find Jesus is everywhere, and even in the churches that you didn't think. And it might be kind of weird. Okay?
And it is.
It is. I mean, when we went to the Greek. The Greek.
Oh yeah, you went there.
We went. Your mother and I went to the Greek deal.
Orthodox.
Man, that was Catholicism hardcore. It was like, man,
There's like no sitting, right?
No, it was
stand?
yeah, and I didn't enjoy the music. Okay, I didn't, but Jesus was there.
Yeah,
and so I think it's really good to adventure out and see what else is happening out there. I don't think it's a bad thing at all.
No.
So, all right, well, listen, thank you for listening. Thank you for indulging, and we thank you for being part of McIntyre Inc. Share this with your friends, maybe your frenemies, and anybody else. maybe somebody that can't get to sleep, and this would be a cure for their insomnia. I don't know. Yeah, thank you. God bless, and show up big.